All right, welcome to the 1 o'clock budget meeting. It's 1:19. We're right on time, just like normal. So I call this meeting to order. We're going to jump to number 5 first. Ordinance amending title, Tulsa revised ordinances title 37, relating to the traffic code, special events, cost recovery, and other things. James, how you doing?
All right. Hello, councilors. James Wagner, Deputy City Administrator, and
Marissa Gomez, council staff.
all right. So we discussed this item last week, and so I'll recap quickly where we were last week, and then kind of tell you what we've done to work on this since then. So as you know, the special events fee is what we charge for special event organizers to have a variety of personnel on the ground for a special event. These are parades and all kinds of special events that require traffic control. We have a fee that was established in the mid-1990s, and then it was adjusted in 2007 at $50 an hour. And so we talked about last week the need to adjust that fee, and since that time we have met with the City Council Special Events Working Group. Councilor Bingle and Councilor Gilbert were in that meeting. Councilor Archie wasn't able to be there for that. And we've discussed sort of an alternative plan to stair-step this rate up. So I'll go over that in just a minute, but I thought it'd be helpful for Marissa, who's worked with this group, to kind of go over some of the process improvements that have been made to this process in advance of kind of talking about the actual rates themselves. So I'll go over that in a minute, but I'll turn it to Marissa to talk about it.
Yeah, okay, thank you. The working group had been meeting for a while now, but we presented to the council in October 2024 3 key process improvements for the permit applications that address the late permits coming to council for you all to vote on them. There's also a lack of clarity and security costs to some of our new event organizers. And then there was also difficulty in ensuring the proper amount of staffing at some of those larger events that happened, where multiple events happened around the same time. So we've integrated some workflows between Skipper, wherever he is, whichever department he is in now, and TPD, so that they're not spending as much time going back and forth in coordinating events. TPD Lieutenant Honer now provides a cost estimate form to new event organizers. And then also we identified some new security that can assist TPD with some of those larger events. So that's where we're at.
So definitely some process improvements to make it clearer for event organizers what the cost will be. Kind of returning to the rates. So the rates that we had proposed, the police and fire department had proposed in this year's budget were to go from $50 an hour to $75 an hour. We heard really the feedback of really that's a lot to increase in 1 year. And so in our meeting to kind of dig into this a little bit deeper, the proposal that we've brought to you today is to take this in 3 stair steps. And if you remember, the chart that we showed last week showed that if we just took the $50 an hour and adjusted it for inflation from 2007 until today, we'd be at $77 an hour. And so this approach stair steps it with 3 steps starting approximately 6 months from now in January to give time for event organizers to adjust, but 3 equal steps of $9 per hour each year to get to that $77 per hour. So in addition, to kind of keep us from being in this situation again in several years from now, there's a requirement that the finance director would, after those 3 years, that the finance director would conduct an annual analysis of the staffing costs and then make recommendations of adjustments to those based on what the city's costs are, with that goal of recovering those costs. So that will keep us from being in a place where we haven't adjusted those costs in 18 years. Of course, those rates would still have to come back in the form of an ordinance change, so the council would have the opportunity to review those and make a decision about whether to raise those rates or not. But this would kind of put us on that path to getting to that inflation-adjusted cost over the course of 3 years, starting in January.
Yes.
Send up flares.
I was gonna make you. Can you stand next time?
It's okay. Do the dance. And this would be standard for all events.
Yes, that is correct.
Was there any consideration to maybe a tiered approach? Because some events are larger than others, because some smaller nonprofits may still struggle with this price increase. So, and I'm maybe based on their budget or whatever.
I'm glad you're asking, because I had that question this
Okay.
morning.
We were talking about that this
Yeah.
morning.
Is there consideration for something like that? Because this may price out some events.
We didn't specifically talk about, like, I know at the last council meeting, we talked about nonprofit versus profit a little bit.
Right.
I think the challenge to that is that many events, I think if they weren't in a nonprofit status, they would probably find a way, to be in that. So I think we'd end up sort of in a situation where they would all end up kind of being in the nonprofit space. But in terms of the size of event, no, we did not really consider a tiered structure based on that. Again, kind of coming back to the idea that I think this ordinance in its initial form was based on a cost recovery. So it's like,
Right.
trying to recover the cost that the city was putting in these, so we're not unintentionally kind of creating like a general fund subsidy essentially for the event.
Yeah, and I do appreciate that. I do believe we should be recovering our costs, because even last week, you were showing, even with the raised costs, we're still not covering cost.
correct.
I'm like,
Yeah.
well, that doesn't make sense, so,
Yeah.
I mean, I understand trying to do that, and I appreciate the fact that we're trying to recover our costs. It's just, we are an event city.
Yeah.
I think a cost burden to some over others. But anyway, thank you.
Yes, and then Dr. Wright.
Yeah, I'm wondering kind of with that line of inquiry, acknowledging though there's a lot of nuance and a lot of potential inquiries there, if it's worth, doing this initial more modest increase, knowing that that kinds of, per your point, sets us on a trajectory, while with the special events working group, maybe exploring, because I could see, per the point James just made, a lot of people could go found a nonprofit if they
Oh,
were
yeah.
private, whatever, and then, there's like, I can picture the little shell ones that could pop up to, creatively take advantage, which I'm not gonna, diss anyone that does that, but I get that that could happen pretty easily for cost savings purposes. But I do wonder about either whether it's a scale of event thing or like organizational budget thing, but my thought would be maybe we do this incremental piece this year with future ones in mind while simultaneously exploring those other options that we, because I understand that still is, for someone who, I know a lot of these events are planned a year, 2 years, 3 years out, and now they are looking at 3 years out going, okay, that's like, 20, 30, whatever, 40K more on my event budget, and how am I gonna get to that, and like, that it might be worth exploring some of that nuance in the interim, while knowing we still could do this smaller incremental piece today, and sorting through the different kind of ways it could be scaffolded without adding too many layers of unintended consequences or cost burden. So, I'm just maybe like, it just seems like something to continue exploring while still doing this initial incremental increase.
Me? Yes, thank you for surfacing that question. I think, not so much nonprofit versus for-profit, but budget of the event or budget of the producer. And if it's nonprofit, you can verify 990s. I think also Councilor Bellis talked last week about ROI. So, there is, right now, like we just have this sense of, XYZ event generates so much economic stimulation. If we can codify that, maybe we can create some sort of fund, so we're not just doing a subsidy on the fund balance, but like, we don't want producers to not produce. In fact, in the Vision Arts grants, we incentivize like festivals and events and things, and so I think there's a balance there. I agree with like a tiered approach, but I would like for the working group or us as a whole to really dig down and really be more, less sweeping about these things. So if we're gonna look at, we could probably take an inventory and look at, large producers, smaller producers, see what their operational annual budgets are, or what the event budget is, and look at the ROI, and also factor in, like, are they shutting down, like, 40 square blocks, or is it one block, right? And is it attracting national and international participation where we're doing hotel nights and things, so we can get a bigger look. I will also say predominantly the events are happening in districts 1 and 4. It's not a little bit in 2, but like, we don't get big event applications for out
I
south.
don't know any.
A lot of the things that happen in my community happen on parking lots of like the mall or whatever. They don't necessarily go through this process. So, when we look at impacts, there's certain communities that are always impacted. I think downtowners especially, it's like, I don't even know how to get to my house this weekend, right? Because everything's
Right.
happening at once. So I just think if we could take a more, like, get an inventory of those regular things we see every year and map it out and look at, they should have reports out of like what, you know, or we can get reports of like how many hotel nights and things, so we can make more, specific decisions. But
Well, and I know just
yeah.
coming off, to
Yeah.
piggyback,
Yeah.
sorry,
No, you're
Tulsa
good.
Tough, coming off that week,
Yeah.
this past weekend, we had 19 states and 4
Yeah,
countries.
and probably I mean, I bet
So
Visit
there's-
Tulsa would be able to tell us like room night pickup and
Right.
stuff. So I just don't want us, I agree, like, if it costs a certain dollar amount to have security provided, we should,
Yeah.
you know, find a way to do it. But maybe an alternative for the working group too is to establish like a assistance fund or something. And if you can demonstrate a need and the ROI is there, it's just kind of like a,
Yeah,
you know, recapture
I
thing.
love the ROI.
Yeah.
Bingle, Dutton, Hall.
We did touch on that a little bit from the spectrum of smallest to largest and what events are recurring year after year, and their financial impacts on the city and how these, this tiered approach of the $9 year over year allows them to budget that specifically and how they market those events. My ask of that, what that looks like in the recurring events, because that's more of where when you talk about wide sweeping, it's about reoccurring events, not the one that just happens to pop up that one year and then doesn't come back again. So I totally agree with you. If it's impactful, there's a different approach maybe that we could use on those smaller events that are recurring, and I think we touched on that just specifically, but because we're in this constraint of budget, we wanted to make sure that we brought something that was more approachable and more doable for most communities, that it would allow them to bake this into their budget as part of their event. And even if they have to pass on, say, like a $2 security cost or add or attach a $2 security cost to their event, they could help get that funding. By doing this in this way, this would get us to the $77 that James had previously mentioned in our last committee meeting. And even then, by the time we get through the third cycle, we still may be behind.
Exactly.
So I don't know where we'll be after that third year. But I do agree that we can dig deeper into the smaller ones and see what those impacts would be. And I think there were some numbers that you gave us. And it looked like it was equal. It had equal impact across from the smallest to largest. So, and there's some other things that we're considering as well that'll come before the council later, but this just seemed like the most logical approach right now.
Okay, so Dutton, Hall, Harper, and then Gilbert.
Okay, so I have a question. With these small venues, and we have all of these event centers popping up, are they actually also applying for event permits? And how is that working with special events and small venues and,
Event centers,
yeah.
an event center is by definition an event center.
Yeah, I know, but if
No,
they're,
they don't have to, unless they're shutting down streets.
Right.
This is
Is
just when
when
they
they
have
have
to
to
use-
apply
Oh.
for a special
Right.
event
Okay.
permit
That's
from
what
the
these
city.
special event processes are for.
okay,
It's not for the event
Right.
centers that are private
Okay.
property.
But
Well,
like
thank you.
BOK
Private.
sometimes will do an event permit through us.
A
if
concert.
they're- Yeah, or if they're shutting
if they're,
down
like,
like for,
street in front?
Like
Yeah.
Okay.
Winter
They're
Fest,
shutting
Yeah.
down streets or
Okay.
stuff.
but in general,
Yeah.
the venues themselves aren't asking.
Okay,
Right.
well, thank
Not
you.
unless they're
I wasn't sure
impeding
how that
into the
played
right of way
into
or
the whole event
onto the
permitting
street.
process, so,
It's mostly for shutting down streets or rights away.
alrighty,
And I'm gonna add,
perfect, thank you.
many events, hire their own security, and so that will not be part of this at all. They're hiring private security for that.
Okay.
Yeah, the counselors are correct. Like, this is really events primarily that close streets, or in the case of the fire department, those that want an EMT and paramedic team, to be there. So
Okay.
that's what these
Like
are.
a
for.
race.
It's great
Yeah.
clarification, thank you. Had to put those two together in my head.
Counselor Harper?
Yeah, so as we're talking about looking at smaller events, even if they are annual, we just got to understand that Visit Tulsa, they don't track every event. Only if you have reached out to them and you're working with them in promotion of those events. And so unless, we're not going to have that data that you all are talking about when we want to consider and look at the smaller events, or the events, they don't necessarily need to be small, but they're just not events that they necessarily.
Well, the data I would
track.
expect us to validate and use would be the data that we collectively have, like from
Skipper Bain.
Skipper Bain,
Yep.
and
But I
the
don't know that
permitting
he-
process that
For
they.
ROI though, is that what you
I'm
mean?
talking about for the ROI, the ROI.
Okay,
When you're talking about hotel rooms and all those things,
Oh.
Skipper doesn't have that.
right.
Skipper is
No,
just
not the
focused on.
hotel count,
And,
right.
and how you've impacted the economy downtown, restaurants and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
Skipper doesn't play a part in that, he just helps gets the event licensed and done. And so there are a lot of events that are not tracked by Visit Tulsa,
For economic
Who,
development.
who actually tracks that data then?
nobody.
Chamber.
The organization, well, the Visit
that's
Tulsa
what
is
Tulsa
the
is.
chamber.
Oh,
Only,
sorry.
That's
that's
just
the thing.
only if
Well,
it's of a
because-
certain size and
Yeah.
scale.
Yeah,
Yes.
if it's a,
Well,
if it's a
right,
Tulsa.
right,
event.
right.
Like
But if
global
it's-
district, they're probably not tracking.
They're not
but
tracking
There's
those
economic
unless,
development happening.
unless
when you
those
do that.
event planners went to, and I know this from experience, they went to the chamber and they've engaged and, they're involved in them promoting that event.
So potentially the impact here is really about sharing the data of our events
I'm just saying you're
with,
not gonna have. it
with the
from-
chamber
Mm.
They're only gonna track the
to
stuff.
see
No.
what they.
So there's a
They're good
system,
ones.
they have a system that, as an organizer, if you're planning an event, you go in and they'll say, okay, you have to give them certain data points, and then they'll input that in the system they have that kicks out that number and that data. If you haven't done that, they're not gonna have it. And so we need to be looking at other ways in which to try to
Maybe
gain
through
that data.
the economic development office in the city.
I think anything's possible, I'm just saying it's not available.
Right,
If
right.
we're
Do it
if we're
in-house.
looking
If,
looking at
maybe
smaller
it's like,
organizations.
when a
not-
permit is awarded, then we're gonna look at the economic development impacts on the back end and
And I think
figure
what
out.
they're gonna say is, the chamber does that.
No,
But
'cause we
need
have to
be-
do that for
We have to be
vision.
intentional.
For
Yeah.
Vision Art grants, they are only awarded for economic development type things.
Okay.
So there's a way on those applications that they report out, right? The anticipated number of participants, how many people will be involved, how many jobs it'll create. I mean, there's a format we already use at the city for economic impact. We can just apply it if the committee decides to get to this place of like having a tiered system or an offset or applying for like assistance with keeping it going. Cause I think what I'm hearing is we don't want any of these smaller things to go away. They're very
Right.
impactful, especially the ones that aren't in the downtown core all the time.
Right. It's just- yeah.
So if we wanna look at that, there's already a method we use on the Vision Arts grants at least that we could model
Well, I
for
think we should
events.
Have that conversation to
Yeah.
see.
Because a lot of the
Vision
Vision
Arts
Arts,
grants, that's not necessarily an event though, right?
well, a lot of the things that are applied for are events. I'm just saying, there's like a precedence of how people are reporting that out if they
And we
want.
can tweak it
Yeah, yeah.
to get the data
Or
that
at
we
least
need.
as a starting place.
But yeah,
Okay.
But I'm just
Well,
saying,
we
this
can
tells us
we
that
can
to-
definitely get in the weeds on
automatically.
that. I appreciate that.
Yeah. And just our next meeting is August 5th, and so.
It's a great day.
We'll start
Say
having
your
those.
birthday.
Oh, my
Might be.
God. I wanna get up and leave now.
Cancel the meeting.
Counselor Archie, you're the only one who hasn't
Counselor,
spoken yet. Do you have anything to say?
No, I don't think so. Maybe I'll start talking and figure out what I want to say. That's not
Not
a good
necessary.
plan, no.
Verbal processing.
Yeah, keep it moving.
No, to Counselor Hall Harper's point, it may be that we work together to come up with a process for these next 3 years, and then maybe incorporate Visit Tulsa into all of the applications to where we try to cast a bigger net. I don't know.
I think what is going to, what we need to do is start getting our list from Skipper of all the events and the capacity of each event, and then go from the larger events to Visit Tulsa. And
See what they're reporting
what the economic impact is, and see what we can do.
That economic impact would come from running those numbers through Visit Tulsa?
No, just having Visit Tulsa be a part of that
Right.
to help us
That's what I'm saying.
with the economic impact.
But they're
Right.
never gonna be
events.
involved with like the boo-ha-ha.
Right.
No.
The boo-ha-ha down
Yeah.
Brookside. They're not gonna, that's not a.
It's the
thing.
size and scale and
Yeah.
outside tourism.
So we're talking about,
Tourism, yes.
we're talking
Yeah.
about Tulsa Tough, we're talking about the marathon, we're talking about the Tulsa
Yeah.
Run,
Irish Fest.
big
Big
events,
events.
Oktoberfest,
Not community events.
Yep,
right,
right.
They're
So-
corporate events.
Thank you.
And
Big
so
events
Juneteenth
that-
is a huge event.
that
Yes,
draw.
But they were not tracking that for years, and I kept asking and asking and asking. And I finally got somebody to tell me, it's because we're not tracking that data. All you gotta do is give us the data points so we can put it in our system.
Yeah.
We have conferences, the Divine Nine, Greek-led organizations who have their conferences here. You're talking about thousands of people coming, regional conferences. We weren't tracking that.
Yeah.
So it's not
Monroe.
necessarily the size.
So that,
No.
so
these are-
that
these are
bike
big
rally,
events.
Right, that's what we're
If
saying.
there's
So an
not, there is
example,
inconsistency.
that bike
Right, that's what
rally,
I'm
the,
feeling.
the
The
Greenwood
bike-
bike rally, is that tracked?
First, and just now, just
They just added
because
it this
we've been
past year, the
pushing
quality
for
of
it,
that.
saying, hey,
Okay,
these are people, that to your point, there were people from over 40 states here
Yep.
yeah.
biking in. We weren't tracking that because that's not a Tulsa event.
Oh, and the BMX too, is that?
That is true, instead of having criteria, you have to do advocacy, yeah.
Okay, deeper dive. Move on.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, so, because I haven't spoken yet, we all nine have to speak on this one, I think.
You can't speak
I
until
would-
August
I would
5th.
say, for those who were here last time, I know Tulsa Run, Route 66 Marathon, and then Tulsa Tough have all reached out to us or have been present. So I'd say, reach out to us again, let us know what you think about this proposal, especially in the short term. How's it going to affect your next event? This is all effective January 1, 2026, so Tulsa Run and Route 66 Marathon wouldn't be part of this. And the other thing I would say is, Counselor Bush, you said this, and I thought, well, I agree with that, but then I started thinking, well, maybe I don't agree with that, just on the general fund not subsidizing some of these things. So when we had the PGA generated $157 million of economic activity. I don't know what that translates to in sales tax, but we know what the number is.
Right.
So that means that money is coming into our general fund.
Correct.
And we're still charging, so we're getting that money that the PGA brought, plus the money that we charged the PGA. So we kind of double dipped, not in the PGA, we gave $100,000 back to them, but
Right.
we're getting fee income and we're getting sales tax income. So I started thinking through, is there a way to really rebate some of the sales taxes that we earn in the form of a reduced fee up here? Because we do want big events here. We want people
Yeah.
from all across the region of the country coming to Tulsa. And we don't want to penalize the organizers by charging them more money necessarily. If we can say we're going to give back 1% or some percent of whatever information we get from Visit Tulsa and other things so that we can reduce that fee. We are going to charge you the fee, but we could rebate the fee too based upon the economic activity that you generate.
Right.
That's a great
So,
But-
I don't know how
They
you put
have
it in
to
the
meet
calculation. I
thresholds.
think it's going to
But
be
can't
more
you do
complex
that-
than I.
But can't you do that already in because I would be like waiving a portion of the fee, correct?
Yeah, but I think if we would just codify it, so we're gonna charge these rates, we're gonna go to $59. But we know that you're gonna, based upon expectations in this year's receipts, then now we know that you generated, let's just say, $50,000 worth of sales tax income. we're going to rebate X% of that sales tax income in the form of either forgiveness for these fees or a check cut back. I think we cut a check back to
Quality
PGA.
events process.
Yeah.
Basically.
You had to do a council action fee waiver that resulted in
Okay.
that going back.
So we
It's
we have a
not
lot
quality
of,
Already doing that.
we have a lot of work to do today, so in your, in that great day
In the
that you're
next-
meeting
Yeah.
in August, I would just say, just
Now that I know.
just dig in a little bit and see if there's anything that we can do to,
Basically a sliding scale is what you're
Well, it's-
implying here.
no, it's just tied to what the economic activity that
That's what I
they're
mean.
generating.
A sliding scale.
Well, I think it's just a
Economic
percentage
impact.
of whatever they generate.
Yeah,
So-
sliding scale of economic impact.
Yeah, if you want to call, yes, well, I think we're saying the same thing.
There's
Yeah,
only
we are.
three counselors on that group, right?
Yes.
So there's room for one more.
Who's on
Yeah,
the
if
group?
you want to.
I was
Yeah,
on the
there you
group.
go.
All
Good
the
point.
events are
Very
in her
short time.
district.
Yeah, if you want to.
Well, both of
Vanessa.
our districts.
You hop in
Mostly
there, yeah.
yours.
Okay,
It's okay. Yeah.
Mostly.
all right, so
We do have
thank you
those
for the
for-
presentation. I would welcome public comment tonight or next week on this from those who will be affected by it. And then we'll see where it goes. Let's put this back on. We have a budget meeting next Wednesday. Let's put this item back on just so we can discuss it again in case we get comments between now and then.
And then we'll still be on second read on 5 o'clock next week.
Oh, yeah.
That's
Mhm. Yeah. Okay, can I read 2, 3, and 4 together?
Thanks, James.
Okay, so 2 is relating to amendments for the budget, the 10% emergency operating fund, emergency telephone fees, and other things. 3 relates to technical changes to the proposed budget for '26. And 4 relates to the adoption and approving of capital improvements plan for fiscal years '26 through '30, and is part of this current fiscal. Yeah, but I need that. This is my working sheet. Okay, so you all know, based upon our conversation that we had last week, that the small budget committee met this morning from roughly 8:30 to about 10:40. We made a lot of progress. I don't want to say we're 100% done in the recommendations we want to bring to you, but we got pretty close. And so I'm going to talk through this document that Sarah is passing out. But Sarah is not only going to provide color analysis, she's also going to provide play-by-play because there are going to be parts that I miss. But we'll just go in order from top to bottom and make sense of this collectively. And I'll say that we didn't have unanimous support on all of these as counselors or as maybe a council representative group and the mayor's group, but we got pretty darn close. And I'll just call those out whenever we get to them. So orange or salmon are recurring items, so you'll see most of those are focused in on the top. And then one-time items are colored in yellow, or canary, or what do we want to call that?
Lemon.
Lemon. Yellow. Lello, as Brooks, our oldest son would have said when he was 2. Okay, so we all have discussed, I think, the urban design planner. This would be moving from resilience and equity back over to the planning office. It's a budget neutral move, $69,000. Is there any questions,
Is that
considerations,
the
concerns?
person who was previously designated to go to communications?
No.
Sorry that explained this one.
It was
Resilience.
originally designed to do grant writing and other things.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
the resilience.
and we're focused, is there a grant writing one on
There
here?
is a grant writing one.
Yeah.
Where is it?
That's number 10.
Oh, yeah, number 10.
Oh, that makes more sense as one
So,
time too.
yeah, so number 10, we're going to just drop in some money because we know we need an effective grant writer, but we do believe that it may not be a full-time position. It'll probably be a contractor or contracts.
Or if it brings in overhead. Or if it brings in overhead for its, like, to pay for itself.
Right.
Wait, is this 69K for the urban design one, is that salary and fringe?
Yes.
Oof. Okay.
That's what was in the budget already.
Oh, okay. Well then, we're
Guess you're not
Tulsa-
applying for that one, Counselor.
Tulsa has great benefits, the
Yeah,
city.
who knows, once it gets into planning, there may be some other possibilities
Okay.
for other funds in order to get the right kind of person in that position, but
Yeah.
I've always
Take it.
focused, in my brain, this is the person who says, who looks at whose partial plan is to see some of the plans that engineers come up with, let's say a street widening plan, and says, you know what, we should move the sidewalks from right up against the road to right up against the wall, and we should plant some trees here, and we should do some other things that improve the ambiance of this road, improve the beauty, the functionality, and other elements. So there are lots more things that the urban design planner will do, but that's always been important to me. On Muni Court, there are no needs for this year, but $227,000 in the plan year, so next fiscal year. This money comes from, Sarah, the MTTA general. So if you go clear to the bottom, the second bullet point from the bottom, there was a general fund subsidy increase for MTTA that was noted, but MTTA has a pretty substantial fund balance.
There is a fund balance in the transit tax.
Yeah.
that
Oh,
the
right, right.
That the city holds. I don't know, though, that the technical changes include backfilling that. That can also be an FY '27 discussion, too.
Right. So basically, we don't have anything to do with any needs for Muni Court, for funding Muni Court this year, but we did put them in the budget plan for the following fiscal year at 227. Anything there? On River Parks, we talked in detail about their various needs. They had to move off of the accounts payable system and off the payroll system. And so now they're doing that on their own, and they also have substantially increased their Turkey Mountain maintenance just because of the increased acreage and the increased usage up there too. In total, that's about $200,000 worth of additional expenses that they're shouldering right now. The county is at a certain number, and it's been typical for the county and the city to be at parity. I should also add in that River Parks has about a 5-month reserve. By the time we were done with it, we believe that they have about a 5-month reserve or so for unusual activities. So we did as best we could in adding some money to their request, but at the end of the day, where we found agreement was to get River Parks on par with what the county was giving. So we were about $52,000 short whenever we started, so we added $52,000 so that the city's expenditure, allocation to River Parks was equal to what the county was giving.
I have those numbers if you want them.
Yeah, go ahead. Mhm.
The county's at 934 a year, and we were at 883, so that's where that 52 comes in. Does that make sense?
Anybody else from the small budget committee want to jump in yet? Yeah, go ahead.
good
Oh, no,
question.
you can go, yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm sure their costs have also increased, not just with the Turkey Mountain maintenance and all that, but as we keep having these windstorms, I've noticed the trees, debris, they have had to, that cost has got to more than doubled since Father's Day.
Yeah.
I am sure. Are they covering their cost? Is that something we help with?
I don't,
I'm looking at Jen.
yeah,
I'm sorry, I just,
Yeah, if I-
don't want to short
let-
them. It's an asset.
I know, let's do this. Let's keep this conversation
Okay.
amongst us at the table, because if I
I
start
know.
bringing other
Then
people,
everyone
then
has
we're
to go
gonna,
off, I know.
right. If
Okay.
you give a mouse a cookie.
Want a glass?
He's gonna
So,
want a
but because nothing is finalized, it's because we have until next week, just like what I said on those increased fees. Talk to Jeff, talk to River Parks, get that question answered, because it's a very important question, and then let's integrate it into our continuing conversations
Okay.
that we'll have tonight next Wednesday at 1, and then ultimately Wednesday at 5 o'clock.
Got it, thank you.
Anybody else have any questions on River Parks? Okay. Code enforcement. So, we talked a lot about their need for either an additional person or additional overtime, or what it was exactly that they needed. From my personal remembrance, I heard that they were making some substantial improvements. They had gone from like 3,000 open cases to, I don't know where they are now, 1,300. Yeah, yeah. So they are working through the backlog. They still do, we need them working, and they have additional needs for resources out there. So the agreement within the small budget meeting this morning was that we would allocate $50,000, this being generally used for overtime, education, enforcement, other things. Yeah.
Curiosity, with that being one time, is the idea just thinking about either like the plan year or following years, like revisiting, just to see and
Yes.
reassess need from there?
Yeah, and I think, and you guys add to this, they've had a vacancy or two that have been
I believe
pretty
they
much
said
ongoing.
for 20 months, at least one of the OT, this is an OT 18 position, has
Yeah.
been vacant. There is, this position I think is probably being held due to the budget proposal. There is one that's actively listed that I saw list just the other day, so there's at least 2 vacant right now. I think the proposal was modeled after a different specific enforcement that we did along the right-of-ways where we had 50,000 of overtime, and that worked well. And so it uses existing people, and it allows people who are here right now, as soon as the money's appropriated, to go ahead and start that additional enforcement. So maybe it would be helpful in the end of the summer season to catch up.
Okay, that's helpful. I'm wondering, just as like a future maybe agenda item, since we've also talked about more within the habitability working group as well for the multifamily inspections, going, hey, let's finish seeing the results and gathering data of the success of proactive work like that, and how that can be time and cost saving, all those other things at a certain point, like revisiting this as well per your point of like the staffing changes to see if that helps, especially since some of this also says it's for education, like that can help proactively change needs later. It just seems like there's like things to revisit, there could be, you know, cost savings, and then that this one-time allocation either isn't necessary to try to find again, or that there's just other mechanisms.
And we have talked with, separate from these amounts, there are sources of funds, you know, just for some education that Counselor Bingle was working on in partnership with people that Terry Ball's team has been able to identify for like just printing of materials to educate people. So that's not assumed in this, that would be a separate education source, but the education was there. If, in the event there was a community partner that would be more helpful in maybe getting the word out to different areas of Tulsa on what the requirements are, that allows for that as well.
Okay, that's helpful context.
Elsa?
Yeah, so I have a question. So at the Route 66 Commission meeting yesterday, we discussed code enforcement, being proactive along the corridor. And what is that going to do to set back their log that's already queued for what, is it 30 to 60 days roughly before most 311 calls get responded to?
That's kind of an operational question that I would have to probably pull somebody up to the table. I think maybe that is funded through some of that through Public Ways funds. And so, that was an additional funding source that was brought online after the PSO franchise came on. So additional resources have been put into that effort, but I wouldn't be able to answer the operational questions to that specificity.
It just seems like a timeliness kind of question for me, and with the centennial coming up. Okay, thank you.
For mowing cycles, so I was educated even on these mowing cycles. So just as a reminder, mowing cycles does not have anything to do with right-of-way mowing cycles. So the mowing cycles that we're talking about on this budget just deal with the park space. So this was a recommendation from Anna America about changes in the budget that she was making in order to meet some of the numbers that she needed to meet. In our conversation, it was really agreed in principle that we can't be requiring people to maintain their yards in a certain way if we're not maintaining our yards in a certain way. That's the best way to color this one, I think. So funding was fully restored in this category at $186,000.
That's great, because I was already getting those exact questions.
Yeah,
We're-
I was very worried about downtown.
Well, and I
I
had
thought
someone already
maybe-
verbalize going, they're not already cut in half, and so I was like, oh no.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there will be some cost containment, we think, whenever, I don't know, rain is a funny thing, because you can't cut grass when it rains, but you're cutting more grass after it rains. So sometimes you can catch up, sometimes, you don't get back on cycle, because, yeah, you're just so far behind. So, they're gonna do everything they can to manage those contracts as tightly and as efficiently as possible. On early settlement, this is one where we did have a little bit of a disagreement. So early settlement, as we heard last week, asked for $48,000. In this proposal to you, it's $24,000 one time, and then nothing in fiscal year '27. So that was the consensus of most of the counselors. Personally, I was of the opinion that we give $48,000 this year with $24,000 next year, and give the county and the volunteers a year to go find the other 24 from the other municipalities that are definitely benefiting from this. So we're just bringing this ultimately to all of us now at the table to discuss. And I saw you first, and then Decker, and then Doug.
Sorry.
And
Treating
then
this like
Bingle.
Jeopardy and buzzing in really fast.
You get to go last.
Yeah,
I mean-
buzzing faster. Just watch word Jeopardy and practice a lot. No, because I understand that like austerity measures with things like this. I agree with you that I would rather see it have a year of like a grace period to sort out prior to the next year. My other thought though is just related to, from obviously learning a lot more about this longstanding program subsequent to it ending up on a chopping block. Since it seems to provide a lot of cost savings to so many constituents, and it seems like it's part of eviction prevention, I do worry that cuts to it are counter, which, correct me if I'm wrong if it doesn't contribute to eviction prevention, but then that seems counter to so many of our city council and mayor's office goals, and that it ultimately that, it's an upstream solution that drives down a lot of affordability issues for families and accessing civil legal justice, eviction prevention. It just seems like, $48K is, man, tragically so much more than my first year teacher salary a number of years ago, but it still is now like a teacher salary. It's not a lot for what it pays back. And the thing that this offers seems to me to align with so many different goals that we've had over time. It just seems like, I understand it's really hard to scrape and find dollars, but this seems like something that it's not a lot to ask for the outcome it gets. So I kind of do want to push back on both a smaller allocation and making it one time and asking people to fundraise. I don't disagree that we should pursue other municipalities chipping in if they're benefiting. Obviously, that makes all the sense in the world. But at the same time, I would hate to kneecap this in the immediate coming year, especially.
Dutton, and then Dr. Wright, and then the guy at the end of the table. No, not.
Not legal.
So, cutting this, I'm wondering what the cost benefit is versus the loss to it, and what it's going to do to the city as a whole with unsheltered numbers increasing, as well as cost to accessing resources and ability to be able to even do so. Especially in a state where we still have minimum wage at $7-something an hour, and we have families trying to live off of that, and that utilities, the cost of living in general is just going up astronomically in comparison to the wage that we are able to get here in the state. And so I'm just wondering what the analysis would be for cost, benefit versus loss and eventual cost to the city over time.
Dr. Wright?
Thank you. So I've learned a lot about this program too. What I learned this morning in the small budget discussion is we're the only city out of the county that is contributing at all. And I think we're contributing about 25% of the cost, even though other municipalities, including the largest one besides us in the county, about 30% of the people utilizing it are from their community. So I understand the argument and the impacts, especially on the eviction docket. We heard some comments last week about, how can the municipal court cut this? I think when you're asking departments to cut 3 or 4%, they put the things forward that don't impact their staffing and things. So I just wanted that was not in the public part of our meeting, and so I did want to clarify that. I think also we learned that in our municipal court, the mediation services are only used 1 to 3 times a year. Could they be used more often if people knew about them? Maybe. But whichever way we go with this, I don't think any of us are saying the program's not worthwhile. I think we're saying when we're asked to make cuts, where can we do it where it's not cutting the other things that we're asking the municipal court to prioritize. I would strongly oppose us continuing to be the only municipality that's contributing to this fund. The citizens of Tulsa County utilize the Tulsa County Court, and we're picking up the cost, and it's not proportional to the utilization that I can see, if somebody can put the numbers forward. So it becomes that equity thing. And we're the largest city in the county, of course, but when it comes to things like this, I think for a long time we've just been in a pattern of practices. This is what we've always done, so let's just continue with doing it. So I think asking for more from the community partners who are also using the service is not a bad thing to do. And maybe we'll find that there's a pathway to fund it even more so for growing needs like we've just heard today with eviction and other issues cropping up that people need it for. We also heard from our realtor partners and how they're using it, so.
So wait, is the thought, as a clarifying question from the small budget, is the thought with the 24K then it's almost like doing a half year to give it some lead time to find the other matching dollars from other municipalities? Is that the logic of the half amount for the immediate
I mean,
fiscal
I
year?
think there was some discussion about not doing it at all and then doing the full Monty that Lakin was talking about, and then a halfway point between nothing and all of it was this kind of wind down, go find either private dollars, in the community, or other municipal dollars
Right.
can step in and contribute, even if it's just a portion of the percentage of people using the services.
Okay.
I don't know who at the county, I heard something about the volunteers or whatever can go get it. I don't know who runs the program or who gets all the funding for it, but, again, I don't think any of us are saying it's not worthwhile. It's just when you're,
Yeah, I didn't hear that at all.
yeah.
No, I don't think
So-
anyone thinks that.
Just as a follow-up on that, my rationale on 48 was that I think every other city is doing exactly what we're doing right now. And so they're already done. So it's hard for them to put anything into their budget. So if we just say, just do what you do, but know that fiscal year 27, the focus is on 24. So at least it gives them that
The lead time.
year,
yeah.
well, it's only 6 months because, well, if they do it like we do. To
And
get
if
it
they're
into the mayor's
plan year,
budget,
yeah.
then, yeah. Okay, Bingle and then Archie.
Okay, so I agree with exactly what you said. I don't like the fact that we're paying for something
Yep.
and doing something just because it's what we've been doing. I totally agree with, we shouldn't be doing it. And I think we all agree that if this is a county court that we're, trying to limit or pull things from their docket through this mediation, even if you pay for mediation out of your own pocket, that's not cheap. So this obviously is a worthwhile program. And because we're where we're at in the year of considerations, just like Counselor Lakin said, I think all the other municipalities have already done their budget, so I would like us, if we can find the dollars, to fund it for this year with the caveat that the county go out and secure funding from those additional municipalities proportional to either population or budget, year over year. Obviously, I didn't know about this until it even came up, so obviously, we're not doing a good job about things that we're paying for as a municipality that are advantageous to our citizens. Some of the numbers that I saw were pretty impactful about what they would save if you have volunteers who would be charging an astronomical fee if you had to go through that adversarial process of the courts, would cost you significantly more, so, than this 48,000, obviously, so I think we need to do a better job of communicating it and helping citizens understand that this resource is available to them without any constraints that I'm aware of, if we're going to be paying for it, but I would ask that we fund it fully for this last year with the caveat that the county go out and ask for proportional funding to either budget or population.
Okay. Counselor Archie.
Yeah, I agree, kind of to my point, but I will ditto it. I was impressed by how much support this program received. I wasn't really aware of it before. I was, there was a lot of anecdotal emails, people saying, oh, it's helped a lot of people, or it's been very impactful. I didn't see, I mean, I had to look for myself kind of the nitty-gritty numbers. And so I think, you know, when you're trying to advocate for a program to be saved, you need to come to the table with a little bit more hard data as opposed to just, we love it and it's been around for a while and it's wonderful. But I do think it's maybe giving them some runway and having those caveats would be good. Maybe this is not a great argument. I just thought, I live in Tulsa, but we benefit so much from folks from Jinx and Sand Springs coming into and spending their money in the city. So yes, we do. This program does benefit folks that are not just in Tulsa, but you know, that is a consideration to make. But I agree with you. Let's give them some lead time.
So we're at 48.0 or 48.24 for fiscal year 26-27. I kind of heard.
I would be, I personally would be fine at 48 this year, 24 next year.
Yep.
You know, if things change and they raise a lot of money next year, then we can alter that down. If they don't raise enough, then we can say, you know, what do we really do?
And we'll verbalize if we go with that route. I'm sure there's more than one counselor at the table who would be happy to be part of conversations with other municipalities to go,
Yeah.
hey, let's do this together.
Well, can we
I'm just
also
naming that
get
to
some of this
some the
harder
folks over there.
data? Like, what is the
Yeah.
total cost of the program, so we know what the
It's
proportions are?
226.
Right, and
Supposedly.
they serve 1,200 a year. How many of those are like citizens of Tulsa versus
I heard
other municipalities?
57%.
Yeah, just like a
Did I make that up?
one-sheet report would be awesome, that we could get annually,
Oh,
maybe in March,
252 is
as
the-
we're planning for the next budget year.
Oh, 52, not 57. Yeah. Are citizens of the city of Tulsa.
He's got a fast track,
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
that the rest of us don't have.
Sarah, one question I had while we were talking, is the reason why county court is referring so many is based upon the kind of cases that they're dealing with?
There are several
There's just-
cases.
yeah.
Municipal court has criminal cases, and so the types of cases they may refer are usually like barking dog cases, cases that will file, but it has to be an appropriate case. So if there's any sort of neighbor, you know, unwillingness to participate, you're still in a criminal case that the government is bringing against you, not
Yeah.
two civil parties bringing against each other. And so that's why. Now, other city departments could refer cases potentially. You know, if you have a neighbor conflict that's reported to you as a counselor, or maybe a code enforcement thing, or we get a lot of drainage cases that we constantly are kind of saying that's a civil matter, you know, those
Well,
are avenues to refer,
It would be
so.
great if we could I was trying to think through the entirety of the city of Tulsa. So I believe you've told me before that TPD will carry around the little pamphlets from time to time for an officer or two. In the cases where they go to somebody's home and they're trying to settle.
Usually like the barking dog
Yeah, yeah.
ones,
Right.
they might go offer that service rather than a complaint. Now, this is me from 10 years ago
Yeah.
remembering this, so what they do today, I don't know.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to track, it'd be interesting but impossible to track those kind of cases. I don't want TPD to have to report that. I don't want engineering services to have to report that whenever they go out and they try to take care of a drainage issue. But it's probably being used and referred to Tulsa citizens by people in the city of Tulsa more than just the muni court route.
I guess one other clarification, you don't have to be in at least my understanding, you don't have to be in a lawsuit with someone to go to early settlement.
Right.
You can utilize that as a way to stay out of a lawsuit, to go in there, so you can just have a conflict.
Okay, you all track numbers on this. If you refer anybody at early settlement, send those numbers to Sarah.
Hopefully more than one person.
Yeah.
Okay, so 48, 24, everybody's okay with that?
Mm-hmm.
Consensus of, okay. Graffiti abatement, so I met, Counselor Gilbert and I met with individuals from ODOT and the Sheriff's Office and the city. Am I missing anybody, Sarah? That's about it. A couple of weeks ago about our current graffiti abatement process. We are spending about $166,000 on a two-man crew and their equipment at this point. Our proposal is to add another crew and equipment, but we can't do that until probably November or December of this year, so that's why it's in at $100K for fiscal year '26. And then it'd be in at a more throttled number of $150K for fiscal year '27. And this is listed as a recurring expense, only because we're not going to fix the problem in this one category in a period of 1 or 2 or 3 years. It's going to just be ongoing, and it's coupled with other things, just like Counselor Dutton was intimating last time. It's like if you just cover it up, you're giving them a blank wall. So what other things can we do? So we're also talking about those other things. But this would at least give us a head start in curing some of the new graffiti and the ongoing graffiti issues that we are having all across town. I see it particularly in the IDL, but I continue to hear about it being
It's everywhere.
put up in other places.
Everywhere.
So the 150K is the recurring?
It'd be 100 this year, and then 150K in plan year fiscal year '27.
Okay.
And then, yeah, there could be another year where it's needed. I would love to get to a place where we said, you know what, we got it figured out.
Okay.
Or people have quit being interested in that because the penalties are too high, or, I don't know, they got focused in on doing something else.
They don't want to clean it up.
Yeah, right. I mean, if the penalty is cleaning graffiti off with a toothbrush for 100 hours, then maybe people are gonna not wanna do it anymore. So, we'll see.
It got me
Yes.
in high school.
What's that? Thank God, you're
Had to
not in high
scrub a
school.
lot of bathroom floors with a toothbrush in high school.
Boy, that's rough.
Holland
I'll
Hall,
say
I wanna
that.
hear more about
Yeah,
that.
I want to hear more too.
Kind of solved the delinquency issue, didn't it?
So I'm wondering if there's been any consideration as to how we can partner with various art groups
We
that
did,
would-
talked about that.
that would save
Murals.
on that
Yeah.
amount that we could take from there and then use it for animal welfare. I mean, I'm just looking at
Well, we.
trade-offs and money going from one to another, but also mitigating.
We kind of use this 100 to 150 as, maybe it's not all going to those crews, maybe there are, somebody in our meeting proposed, why don't we do murals in those areas that are consistently tagged? Because they.
It does stop you.
Yeah, it's that artist versus artist thing. It's like, I don't know, somebody already used their art on that place, so I'm not gonna use art in, a different kind of art in that
Well,
place.
there's a whole respect with
Yeah, respect.
graffitiing versus tagging, so,
Yeah.
There's,
Can I say something
Sure.
right along with that? Take it with a grain of salt. Australia was having a huge problem with graffiti, and tagging. They got all their graffiti and tag artists, and they're the ones that created the murals, stopped it on everything else, and it is cool, the art that they produced.
yeah.
There's on alleyways, there's fence lines
Yeah.
all over the country, and it's amazing how but they took the actual graffiti artist, which, to your point, there was respect for them. And so then
Yeah.
they wouldn't trash it anymore. It was like, okay, we're leaving that alone.
You have to understand the culture. I mean, tagging is not
Tagging's
necessarily.
yeah.
Tagging and graffiti are two different,
Totally
very
different. I
distinct
know.
things. And
Anyway.
so, yeah.
It is a thing.
So let's talk on animal welfare. Somebody else from small budget jump in here on this one. I
This is
know,
the
I know the
part-time vet.
proposal
Part-time
was,
vet.
This is the part-time
The-
vet that we discussed, because we heard last week that they only have one vet that is doing all of the spade and neutering, and someone has to feed her during lunch while she completes the surgery. So that's what that 85,000 is for an additional,
Not to be fed, but to alleviate.
yeah,
yeah, and the 85 wasn't our number, it was their number.
yeah.
Correct.
Yeah, and we did talk about the overtime, and we believe that the average number of vacant positions is 3, and that, is that right, Christie? Close.
I don't think I have the number of vacant positions, but that their vacancy would cover their overtime and
Yeah,
has in the
we-
past without dipping into other areas of the DCE department.
We kind of ran the numbers, Jared may have run the numbers based upon our conversation that we had last week, where we were talking about $140,000 in overtime, and then we talked about the vacant positions, and we think that they net out at the end of the year, so that there won't be any additional needs there.
Yep.
Go ahead.
So we're just looking to add a part-time vet to a whole new facility that is going to be twice the size with already full numbers if we go on the numbers that they already have at the facility now.
But we also talked about, last week, was partnering with other, with OSU, partnering with other vet clinics, to see what we can put together as a partnership as that new clinic is being built and opening.
Right, but
Some
that's,
creative staffing options. yeah.
it's really creative. Didn't OSU cut some of their vet programming?
Yes.
So-
They're getting ready to, but there's still different, there's still some going through, they haven't cut it completely. So.
Just get a $250 million
Yeah,
grant
so-
from the state for a new veterinarian facility?
That's-
It's like one of their programs sunsetted, and then I think
Yeah.
Finger Point the other one.
Yeah, I can't.
So
I gotta
it's still
make sense of it.
concerning to me, though.
But there's also TCC that offers classes also for vet assistants. So, there could be ways of partnering with different, creatively, working with other universities, colleges, higher ed, and helping alleviate that problem until we can, until we see our budget getting better.
As a person deeply involved in animal rescue and whatnot, I do know that TCC has a volunteer program that students can get credit for. And
It's for Tulsa Achieves. If a
Right.
student goes through Tulsa Achieves, they have to do community
Right.
service for
And
that free education.
I do know from experience that a lot of the rescues that I have worked with, there will be Tulsa Achieves students that sign up to volunteer.
My
and
daughter did it.
9 times out of 10, they don't show up.
Uh,
They might the
We
first
showed up.
couple of times, well, I'm just saying, so to look at these other avenues, I appreciate it. I still think, though, that we're not going to get to where we want to be with animal welfare by putting a Band-Aid on a situation that's gonna
We're
cost-
starting, I agree with you, but we're starting somewhere, so.
I get it,
Yeah.
I just had to verbalize. Thank you.
Sarah may have some additional information that may be
Just-
helpful.
Just a couple points that weren't on here. The current animal welfare vacancies, five positions, is what I was mentioning, which is a lower vacancy rate than it was a few years ago. It was running at like 8 or 9 positions per year, so they're doing a lot of good work to improve that. I know the animal welfare working group, that you guys have started to develop draft goals. I think at your next meeting, you'll go over those goals. I do believe that a staffing pattern, and continued work on that is one of those goals.
Right.
And then on the mid-year, there were a few items just that have come up over the course of the committee discussions about mid-year check-ins, and animal welfare staffing is one of those. So I just wanted to put those on there.
And the animal welfare group also is looking at other funding options, so that could bring some relief and some help to that particular area, so.
Counselor Dick, right?
Thanks. So the vet thing has been something we have been talking about at this table for at least 3 or 4 years. So I'm gonna take the win where we got it with a half-time, part-time additional vet, because it's something we've been fighting about since at least 2022. You know, my first several years here, we were in literal cut budgets down to $799. Then after the pandemic, $945, and we've gone up from there. When we increased from $799 to $945 is where we started having these conversations about staffing over there. In the budget proposal we received, there is no increase for fiscal year 27 on those positions. So when we do this mid-year check, we heard there's 18 to be at ideal.
From whatever
We
the
heard that, but we
16.
don't expect on July 1st to be at full capacity. I would love for our colleagues on that working group to help determine what capacity might look like on July 1st, because I keep seeing that we've never been below 100% this whole year. They're at 150% already. So I imagine when you open a bigger facility,
Could be at 100%.
Yeah.
you might be at 100%. I don't know what that wiggle room is, but, so that we hit our budget retreat in January with some real numbers, whether it's we need 6 positions, and how are we gonna get there? Because I hear what you're saying, Counselor Dutton, and as somebody who has run a nonprofit in this town, volunteerism is awesome, but then you have to have people to coordinate the volunteers, which is another burden on an already stressed system. You're gonna have to have volunteer coordination, and liability and all of that. And just a lot of these community partners in the rescue space are volunteer-led and volunteer-funded out of their own pockets, not even mentioning just individual Good Samaritans that are doing it. So if we could get an agreement about, if we're not trying to strive for the full 18, you know, are we looking at 10? Are we looking at 9? And then how do we get there on this next fiscal year 27? Because right now in this budget, there isn't any. So I don't know if we want to have a little talk about putting for the plan year fiscal 27 some positions, or if we just need to wait till the budget retreat. But as you all know, if it's not in the plan year, it's a lot harder to add in. So that's just my request.
Yeah, adding it in the plan year makes the balancing of the plan year budget complicated.
Sure.
I mean, it
Yeah.
is what it is.
Correct.
I was going to suggest maybe an interim provision in that if it's the will of this group to just go ahead and put it on the retreat priority list for next year right now.
Staffing.
Yeah, just say, we have to.
Yeah, it's
we have to
negligent.
determine what
I
it
know we
is.
always do,
It's
yeah.
not going to be open between now and when we meet and when we approve the budget, but it's gonna be darn close, and we've got to resolve it.
Yeah, and I'd just like to know if we're not striving for 18, like what is a reasonable, a responsible number?
Yeah,
They can operate.
so can we go ahead and put it on there? Can you remember? So, because in case one of us forgets.
Yes, but remember the other elected official, that's an issue, but it
Yeah,
sounds like you might outweigh.
but we just want to be able to remember that we need to propose it.
Well, we've got, and I mean,
I wrote
that be? What?
you know, I thought that the staff, Sherry and Colton came with like a very detailed proposal, they put it all on the table. So that's where we have to negotiate, so we gotta figure out though I don't wanna just pick an arbitrary number, like they need 18, you get 9.
Right.
Like, we need to understand what the impacts are.
I think we can discuss that in our animal welfare
Yeah.
group and bring that recommendation to the table.
Before the budget retreat, so like this fall.
I
Okay,
hope so.
I feel comfortable about that then.
Okay. there's some peace with you on that?
Yes.
Okay.
She's on that working group.
Yes,
So-
yes.
That's good.
Yeah.
Okay, on
There's
number
people who
nine, the
push
capital
and people who
adjustments
pull.
with respect to housing funds, there was just the opportunity to go ahead and take some actions here during this week and next relating to the IoT appropriations. The small budget committee just thought it would be more prudent to let the proposals come in. The RFP was just issued. Let those proposals come in. Let those who are from the council review those proposals and then have the council take action. Otherwise, we're going to take action and not really have any wherewithal to do as much as we would, rather than commencing the appropriation action from the very get-go with full knowledge of what was going on.
So let me make sure I understand. So we're not proposing bonding forward?
Oh, no, that's
This is
not.
a timing.
It's just the timing. We're not going to delay this by taking, we're being asked to make a decision now, let's say like right now. What we'll do is make a decision like after we have more complete information relating to the proposal process and who the,
Okay.
After we
So
know
when you're
who's
saying-
managing the
Okay,
dollars.
Yeah.
that's what I was,
Yeah.
The request now is put the dollars
Who-
in and then we'll get someone to manage
Who
them.
was gonna be the administrator?
yeah.
Right, I think,
We'll-
yeah,
We'll figure out who the manager is and then.
then put the
in.
dollars in.
Okay, all right.
The dollars are there.
That's
It's a
clear.
timing.
That's good.
And then
clarity.
I think what, on the review panel, Counselor Gilbert's on it, but we did request maybe one more seat from the council, so hopefully we have
Yep.
two
We
sets of
have,
eyes.
Karen, Sarah, and Counselor Hall Harper. Okay, item 10, we already talked about with respect to the grant writer, after the budget proposal process.
Oh, I have a question.
Shoot.
This is something, last week, we had, I forgot her name, but from the Office of Children and Families.
Ashley Phillips.
Ashley.
Ashley, didn't she say something about Impact Tulsa's ability to write grants for,
Goes to a
For the
specific
city.
subject area, maybe.
so are those services, grant writing services being sort of factored into how much it would cost for a full-time grant?
They're just really focused in on educational related things.
And we've
Children, youth,
historic-
and families,
Oh, sorry.
not this broader thing where we need help getting.
Yeah, they're
This
not
would
gonna
be-
do
This would be like
citywide.
infrastructure grants or things that are
Yeah.
way outside of their scope.
Because,
Yeah.
because didn't she mention something about?
She did.
She did.
Infrastructure.
She did.
She did.
I kinda asked her that question.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah,
but
she
it
did,
won't-
but that's still a lot of that.
It's not the same kind of
It's very
infrastructure.
different, yeah.
Okay, all right.
Yeah,
Education and
They're
infrastructure.
focusing on education and
like neighborhood
neighborhood
conditions.
conditions.
Yeah.
This grant position was actually proposed a year ago.
For what? My.
Type of grant.
So the city does not have a dedicated grant, right? We have a grants department that mostly deals with
Is
federal
administrative.
pass-through dollars for administration.
But not to write.
So we have, as you know, like the police department gets grants, the fire department gets grants, Parks sometimes does, but it's really dependent on if there's a staff member who can do it. And we don't have someone doing a comprehensive look
For what
to
we're
try to
missing
draw
out
down
on.
private or other governmental dollars.
And it was made clear to me over time from talks with other parallel cities and some other folks, like especially from like, this is last presidential administration, but still like Build Back Better dollars. We just like, there was stuff we left on the table because there was no one to apply. So it's really out of the, what are we leaving on the table that someone could actually be looking
We
for?
we also learned through the 3H task force the number of dollars we're leaving on the table, because simply we don't have a person dedicated to unlock them.
So that was that one.
Yeah.
Okay, and I understand all that.
Yeah.
A good grant writer, especially to pull down those difficult
Yep.
grants,
It's gonna be more than this.
it's gonna be twice as much.
Correct.
Well, that's why some of this is.
That's
that
why
they
I
just
wondered
sort of-
about the 75.
Well, that's why part of it could be, like, it says contract too, is like we could contract with them on a shorter term to be very specific and targeted
As
instead of
like
broad
as-
scope, which can get
as
you pretty far,
needed.
yeah.
Okay,
I mean, we have that same conversation.
okay,
Because I think the in-house
It's a
one was gonna
start.
be 90, was that right? It was 60/30 with the match dollars. And then today, when we discussed going contract rather than in-house, I think we were at that 90 mark, and we all said that's probably not enough. But 75 would be the half year,
okay,
right? Like starting
Yep.
January 1,
got it, thank you.
yeah. So I'm with you. I think all of us in nonprofit were like, woo.
For those of us who've dealt with it, I'm like, yeah,
Yes.
no, good luck.
Yeah, especially the administrative part on the back
Okay,
end.
the
Yes.
last, I'll speak to one and then I'll let Counselor Bellis talk to the other one. The non-sworn stipends is still very much on the table. It would just be in the form of, if we're doing well after 120 days, which is an unknown condition, if we're doing well after 120 days and our budget income is exceeding our expenses by $1, then the stipends will be triggered. So that basically would cause stipends to roll into salaries in or about
Q2,
December. Yeah, hopefully.
And we're gonna run a,
If we're above.
Yeah,
It
by
could be
resolution.
January, it could be February.
by resolution, we're going to,
Yeah.
Not by resolution.
No?
It would be in
By
the budget
technical.
ordinance.
Oh.
In the
We
budget.
would just do like
a trigger.
a trigger.
So,
Yeah.
we've worked through some draft language and then we'll update that in the backup for next week that reflects that concept.
And I should say, or if there are some federal reimbursements that are contemplated and have been requested and are received. But again, it's an unknown condition. Yes, ma'am.
Not directly, but kind of indirectly a question because I haven't figured out how to find it. So there are no
Yep.
steps in this year's budget.
No. That's just,
And we don't think that's a problem as far as retention and recruitment.
I mean, it is.
it is. It's
Yeah.
just a situation of
We've also done
of the
historic
budget. And so
increases.
that's why we really focused in this year in bringing this action from the council's perspective and supported by the mayor's office as well, was, from my standpoint, we gotta do something. These employees are way too important for us.
Well, I know for the
so-
police department, we've actually recruited with the steps as well. It's a recruitment tool.
It is, but that's taken care of, I mean, or that's discussed during negotiations that we don't have anything
And
to
the
do with.
negotiations come in 6
Later.
months after we approve the budget.
Do we know if we did fund the steps for this year, do we have any idea how much that is?
I have no idea how much that is.
Thought Commissioner Roberts was here.
Right, no, for everybody.
So, for everyone,
What?
I don't have that.
Okay, what do you have?
Sworn and
What I have is
non-sworn, or you just talking
non-sworn.
non-sworn?
Non-sworn?
For non-sworn, a 1% increase is approximately $982,000 to the general fund and $756,000 to other funds.
But that's what we're talking about, in the non-sworn stipends?
The
Is that-
1% stipend.
No, we're
is
talking about 1%
approximately the
step
same
increase.
I
as
think
the
we need to get
1%
back with you on the
increase.
step cost, and we will.
Thank you.
Okay.
I'd like to know the step
Yeah,
cost.
you're fine.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
Just
Or
for
non-sworn.
just for context
Right.
though, Counselor, even in those cut budget years when negotiations happened, in November, December, they would come back with, we negotiated this thing. Since I've been on council, which was 3 cut budgets and 3 growth budgets, we have done increases every year to fire and police. Or definitely police, maybe fire had like a interim, I forget what fire negotiated one time, but
I would just, for my
We
own
find the money.
information, Mike, like to know.
Sure.
Thank you.
yeah.
All right,
Okay.
but are you, can I, for
Sure.
clarification, is it for a sworn or a non-sworn?
Sworn?
Okay.
Well,
Yeah.
I would like to know both.
Sure.
Sworn and non-sworn.
I would say, I know this is like a bigger data set, but it's worth seeing some of that in the presence of what's happened, for like even the last 5 years relative to some of the increases, especially for sworn, and then, and then for non-sworn as well. There's definitely, as President Wright said, have been some historic increases. Not that I'm justifying, like, given what's happening economically, that people don't get like COLA increases, of course.
Sure.
Thank you.
Counselor Bellis, you wanna go over the last one?
Yes.
Whatever they negotiate, we do.
Yeah.
That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, this one's, I'm excited about this one. Having, within the budget, knowing that obviously housing is a priority for all of us. And a lot of what we're looking at financially for housing is within like IoT, but that takes time and there's solutions needed now. After talking about and looking at the pace of encampment decommissioning and knowing that that is limited by how many places there are for people, got a little creative in seeking out, and shout out to Sarah Davis for helping identify a place to find dollars for rapid rehousing and just encampment decommissioning. Which these are these are some remaining COVID relief funds. So one time, but this can help open up either, one, of course, just like securing of sites so that when they're getting decommissioned, like we can actually make sure they stay decommissioned for what we are doing, which right now the rate of what we can clear isn't super high. And again, that's limited though by that rapid rehousing factor. We already have those agreements as a city, right, with different like hotels for hotel rooms, which like the day center does that work. And that could be scaled, so this would help accelerate some of that so that we can clear, more encampments a bit more rapidly while we wait for other transitional housing and other things to come online. So this just kind of fast tracks some of the things that I know we most, wanna see urgently to get people into safer circumstances. So just excited that there's these one-time dollars we can commit to that.
So I have a question. So my understanding is there's intent to claw back funding specifically towards this from another organization. So I'm trying to figure out.
What kind of funding?
Affordable Housing Trust Fund, like $1.5 million.
Oh.
That's not part of Counselor Bellis's proposal.
I understand that. That's not the point that.
I guess he's asking if there's
that
about
is
to be
not
other
my
dollars.
question.
I guess he's asking if there's about to be
Not my
other
question.
dollars available.
Yeah,
Is-
so,
I don't know
I
if
just
that's-
made a tried to
Yeah.
keep it a general
Yeah.
statement without identifying it, but this $230,000 of COVID relief funding, I really, in your discussions on the needs of funding and where those funds will be used, and what other potential funding mechanisms are going to use in succession to this, how much are we talking about through, how many different layers of funding are we talking about being pulled together specifically for this?
Decommissioning.
For
Yep.
decommission.
That was my question too, like, what's this vote called?
I think
And
that's
so,
part of
this is a
I mean,
start.
This is
there's,
like an-
that, I think that's partially why this isn't being proposed in the budget. It's
Yeah,
being
yeah.
proposed as a resolution.
that we would put on and then
that
create a budget item
we
down the
are
line.
earmarking these funds
Okay,
for
so this
further
isn't part of it,
consideration.
this isn't part
No,
of
sorry, I
putting
should've
into the
clarified that.
budget.
No, so
Right.
instead of adding this into the budget right now, what I'd be asking is, and this would be on next week's agenda, a resolution just trying to earmark going, hey, we think these dollars
But my
should-
question
yeah.
would still stand.
Yeah, you're, oh,
either
no,
way.
no, and that'll give, but that helps us holistically set aside that we think that that's a good use of these funds, which I would argue it is, while we also paint, per your point, a more holistic picture of the other dollars that are coming
Yeah,
together,
where
knowing
are
that's a
where are we
bigger.
pulling all
Yeah.
these
So
what's the
couch
need?
cushion dollars for,
The need is.
from,
The need is-
and how much is the need?
Millions.
Yeah.
Huge,
Yeah,
the need is
I know.
huge, and so the part of it, and obviously Emily's a much better person to talk about this than I am. It's part of our state opioid application rapid rehousing, but we even know that, which was quite, you heard that on your agenda last week,
Yeah.
was only going to pay for a fraction of what the need is. And so the need is large, the available funds, this pot of money is the only like currently available funds that if you wanna begin encampment decommissioning at a more rapid pace, that would be available.
Yeah.
Just to get started.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so, but we do know there's lots of things to be worked out, which is why this wasn't put in the budget proposal, but just earmarking it, holding it aside through resolution, just like you did all of your other ARPA and CRF funds. So we know that we're working towards a potential budget action.
Right, but this is just basically a shift of funding is all that it is, so.
Well, this 231 was never
It's
appropriated to
unallocated.
any.
No, I get that.
Yeah.
I get that. You're taking the funds that are here and shifting them over to that specific
Yeah,
appropriating.
instead of
for-
graffiti
Yeah,
or some of these
exactly.
other
Yeah.
wish list items.
Yeah,
Yeah, granted,
so
this should help reduce.
that's when you, large is not definitive. The term large is not definitive, so what I mean when you say the number is large, what is that
Millions.
number?
It's millions.
And where are the funding sources that you're trying to pull from right now?
Yeah, I mean, I'm working just on this with Counselor Billis.
Yeah, I get
So
it.
that's a
So
question
the
probably
question was
for
more directed to Mike.
Yeah.
Emily or something
Yeah.
like that.
I think Sarah did a great job answering it, though.
And I think this will also
I
help
think
us with like accelerating the encampment decommissioning and actually see the results of that, which will better inform us even knowing what the full bucket of need is there. We just haven't gotten to really even like take a like real, like chip away at it.
I mean, right now we have $0, so
Yeah.
231 is
Yeah.
gonna be something.
Again, and yeah, this just really helps expand, to me, it's like the hotel room thing, like, it's not something we have to wait for, like, something to be built. It's stuff that's sitting there.
I think I should also add that encampment decommissioning is not, the whole end goal is to put people into housing and to permanently close an encampment. Different cities close encampments different ways, but they all require some sort of resource, whether that is continual security or whether that is fencing and this, there are no funds for those kinds of resources right now.
And I get that, but
Yeah.
what I'm saying is that
I was just
when we're
adding that as an
decommissioning an
option.
encampment,
Yeah.
we're not decommissioning it for it to move somewhere else and become.
Correct.
So to be,
Yeah, we're
to
not
be,
creating that same
Yeah,
churn we already
exactly,
see.
the nomadic.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's
So
what
part-
this is designed for.
part of the issue is that term has been used for activity that's not actual decommissioning. It's
Correct.
sweeping
It is
encampments.
sweeping.
Actual decommissioning, like if you think
It's a
of it with
3-week
like a
process,
capital
yeah.
D, is a method of, like, you shut it down and those people have a place to live. So they don't have to come back and other people are not gonna come in.
Right behind it.
So unfortunately, for a couple of years now, maybe unintentionally, that word has been used to describe an activity that's not actually that activity.
That's why I said, I
Yeah.
don't wanna throw good money after bad.
No, no, the idea is to have enough housing for
Right.
everyone that needs a house.
That's,
So I want
That's
this to
what
be
I
said in our-
purposeful and it be a permanent solution, not that we keep doing the same thing over and
Yeah.
over.
Right.
Yeah, that's what this is part of,
Decommission,
is they
that
have a full,
means
they have the plan, they have nowhere for people
forever.
to go, yeah.
And even if that number is astronomical, I wanna hear that astronomical number.
Exactly.
I'm just not, I'm not the
I know
person
you're
to
not.
put the number on it.
And
You're just the one that
that's-
can make the request for
I
us.
did towards Mike.
Okay,
I wanna know
so
what that is.
as we wrap up, given that we have a 2:30, so the funding sources listed, they're the 5 bullet points at the bottom of the page. So we have, you can read those yourselves. So that total, so if you take away the encampment decommissioning support, which is out
Outside.
of budget, as is the non-sworn stipends, those are being handled through those different sources. If my math is correct, we have 892 in ads, 892,000 in ads, and about $779,000 in additional income from the sources. And I
Does that
should
include the
say,
adjustments we made during this discussion though?
yeah,
Because I have a different number than that.
oh, you do? Oh, well.
We'll let you guys settle that.
Yeah, see, I have $113,000 difference. So between the two numbers. Jared, Christie,
Yeah.
anybody?
Were you guys tracking
Y'all know?
those changes?
I just
during
had
the
one
discussion?
change of 48, from 24 to 48.
Yeah,
Yeah, that was the only change that I had.
yeah.
In this meeting, just the 24 to 48, but, I mean, I think we had like we're adding up items after small budget, it was more like 560, but nah.
You're taking the 231 out? And
Yeah, I
the, and
didn't
the
include
1.1, the 1.7 out?
Right, right,
Yeah.
because those are different sources.
Uh-huh.
And on the bottom one, that emergency operating reserve, we were trying to go to, the proposal from the mayor was to go to 10%. So we get 400, my calculations are we get $465,000 if we move that number from 10% to 9.9%. That would cause us to go from 8.5% to 9.9%, which is a huge move up. In order to get this all balanced, if we were just using that emergency operating reserve for the balance, it would go from 9.9 to 9.87. But I'm not gonna say that's the way that we should fund it. I'm gonna say we have about $113,000, according to my calculations, to figure out what the sources are. We've already identified the uses, and then we can discuss those at our budget meeting
So
next week.
892 is where we ended up here,
That's what I have.
but we haven't had that 2.6 revenue discussion either.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's still a little work on that. So does everybody generally, does everybody generally feel good about where we got the report out from the small budget committee? Do you feel good and informed about what took place in
I
that
really
meeting?
appreciate
Yes.
this.
Yeah.
I spent a lot of time preparing it with Sarah's fingers and
I
a computer.
appreciate
I mean,
you
the
taking
color
that
coding.
constructive criticism like that. It's hard.
I'm
Okay.
gonna make a statement, it doesn't elicit board comment today, but in the future it does.
Yep.
I have grave concerns about us cutting the River Parks budget. I know we'd added back 52,000. River Parks is one of our biggest assets.
Yep.
And just like we have with other infrastructure type projects, we have neglected the funding for them, which will cost us in the long run. So again, I'm just making that statement. I know it's a tight budget. There's other areas that we can cut and start taking care of this. We've asked the River Parks to do a big, huge thing up on
Yep.
Turkey Mountain.
Big.
Costs are massive, and here we are not giving them money. I'm just throwing that out there. I would like to try to find some other
We still have,
holes to,
7
or
days.
things we can pull to try to add
Yep.
back to their budget, because I think it's wrong. It's one of our showcases,
yeah,
is River Parks.
well, keep looking, for sure.
Thank you.
Keep looking and see what you can
Okay.
find. Because that's one reason why we did not choose to vote tonight, because
Right.
we were giving you this report now. And if you and others want to try to go from the 52 to 100 to whatever the number is that you have in your mind, yeah, then, we have a budget that has other things that, might not need to be in there, or you might be able to find additional resources to.
Thank you.
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
I think
Do you
Chrissy.
want to go through this technical change memo of the things
Oh,
that
yeah.
are not?
Yeah, please.
So,
I know, yeah, this takes
This is your-
priority.
Our budget meetings need to.
So Jared's gonna hand this out, and it's similar to last year, so this is gonna be, it's gonna contain three things. It's gonna change and contain reappropriations. These are items that the departments had in their budget for FY '25, and maybe they just didn't get it under contract or whatever reason, and they're just asking to carry that funding over into the next fiscal year. So all those items start with the word reappropriation, and they have no color coding. And then there are items with color coding. The gold ones, we tried to match up with like what we talked about with council, and so many of those things we've already talked about. And then there are blue items. And so I'll probably focus mostly on the blue items. These are changes between the proposed budget and now that the administration, finance, that we've came up with. So starting in, and it's broken out by fund, so the first part starts with the general fund, and it's by department. So in that area, we inadvertently included 2 grant-funded positions in the general fund that have other funding. It was just how they're in our system, they had a home org of the general fund, and so we inadvertently included them, so this is taking those out. They still have the grant funding. You'll see this in a couple of different departments. Then moving into municipal courts, the very first line, the judges' salaries, these are the increases in salaries that were approved. And then again, in the blue, we have the grant-funded positions that were inadvertently included. Then I'm gonna skip down to the next blue, in the Department of Resilience and Equity. We have a position move, the $61,000 is just moving between department, it's just part of the reorg. And then we have some more grant-funded positions. Then in the fire department in FY '27, we inadvertently left off their computer replacements and software. So we're adding that back in. In the Parks Department, Anna briefly mentioned this, but they were moving some items around within their own department in their budget, and when we looked at it, they looked like ads, and so we took them out, because we weren't doing many ads this year, so this is just restoring that funding back. Item L, the Mayor's Office of Economic Development, that's the $57,000 that we've talked about before. In section N, by the way, this memo was put together between the 10:30 and 1 o'clock, so we've already found a little error. But here's that, first item is that 61,000, that's just that movement of a position to the correct place. The $69,000 there isn't showing negative, but it should be positive. It's moving that urban design planner that you guys have been talking about in. And then the department asked to change the positions that they'd asked to abolish as part of the reductions, and so that they just changed from from a senior planner to a planner, so that's just a $26,000 change. We added funding for the homeless program coordinator in FY '27 when that funding runs out. So that's all for the general fund, and then moving into other funds, I'll just try to go quickly through these. The next 2 and 3 is a direct cost allocation change related to the IT department, and nets out between the two funds. Items 4, 5, 6, and 7 are all just, we got our final numbers for our HUD grants and just incorporating that in revenue and appropriations. Item 8 is a project that is complete, and so we're just moving the remaining funding into the next project that's planned. Item 9 is the homeless initiative projects, that's what you guys discussed here, just taking that out. Item number 10 is moving the timing of the trails project, and so we're taking it from the low water dam. That funding will be restored in 28, and so we're not taking any funding away, it's just a timing, a project that is ready to go versus a project that's not quite ready to start. Item B on 10 is transferring some revolving loan proceeds that have came in from TEDC into a fund that, taking it out of our restricted sales tax fund and putting it in another fund. When we do actually appropriate that, that'll come to you guys as an action. Then on the very last page, the sewer, it's not the last page, it's page 4. The sewer department is just, both of these projects will happen. They're just changing what will be funded from their pay-go, their cash funded, versus what we paid from a bond. And so you don't see the bond funding here, you see that when they actually do the bond. And then the final page are the closed projects listing that we included. So those are all the changes that we have, and we will change the mediation on here to what was discussed as well.
Anybody have any questions? The technical memo, technical change memo? Will we see this again next week, or is this? Will we see it next week if we need to see it next week? Okay. We're not voting on any of this tonight, so. Okay. Anything else on this agenda at all that I missed, or that anybody has any questions about before I? Okay, so I'll adjourn the meeting. I say let's start at 3:05. Is that okay? For whomever is chairing this next one?
I didn't see that.